Hey guys, so before we get into today's episode, I want to take time out to give credit where credit is due. I want to give props to the program that helped me get where I am today. There would not be a tech job Tina here talking to you about how she went from being an SDR to an AE in 8 months without this program. That program is Course Careers. It's a self-paced, affordable course that you can take to help you get into an entry-level tech role. Now, I took tech sales and I never looked back. But hey, maybe tech sales is not for you. That's okay. They got other entry level tech roles that you can choose from, all at a very affordable price. And I'll even help you make it even more affordable by giving you my discount code link so you can take an additional $50 off of any course that they offer. And they also have payment plans available. So for those of you on the fence looking for a way to break into tech, I am a walking, breathing testimony that it works. So get off that fence and go get your tech job. Peace. What's going on, guys? It's your girl Tech Job Tina signing in for another episode. So in today's episode, I'm going to share with you some content that I found on YouTube. Of course, it's tech related and I found it pretty interesting. So of course, we'll do some screen share and we'll dig into it. But first, I know I have a lot of new viewers coming my way and you may not have had a chance to look at any of my old content. So I think it's time for me to reintroduce myself to my viewers. All right. So like I said, this is the Tech Job Tina channel. I started this channel as a way to vlog or document my journey breaking into tech, right? I came from a non-traditional background. I've never held a true sales role. And then fast forward, one day I decided that I wanted to do something different. And whatever it was, I knew I wanted to be able to get paid a really nice salary for it. And so I decided I would explore the world of tech, not having any idea how I would get into tech or where it would start. And then once I ran down that rabbit hole, I came across tech sales and the rest is history. I broke in last summer, May of 2023, into an entry-level SDR role working at a construction tech company. Spent 8 months as an SDR at the company that I currently work at. During that 8 months, I had a lot of success as an SDR and I top performed every single month. I never missed a quota during my entire 8 months as an SDR. And in fact, my performance as an SDR sent me to President's Club. And it also got me a quick promotion to account executive, which is what I am right now. After 8 months as an SDR, I got promoted to account executive, and I have been an account executive at my company since February the 1st. So here we are. We're in June. So we're what? February, March, April, May. About to knock down 5 months as an AE at my company. So that's the short and skinny of my story. If you want to see more about, my journey, I recommend you go back and watch my early videos and just binge watch that thing up into the present. And that'll give you the full story of how I began and how I got to where I'm at right now. All right. So now that we got that out of the way, I want to get into what we're going to talk about. So I saw this very interesting study and I'll share the video with you, but I'm going to paint the picture for you, right? So imagine you are a hiring manager, right? And imagine you have an interview set up with John Smith, right? John Smith's Zoom virtual interview is about to start in 5 minutes. So you are prepping to hop on this virtual interview with John Smith. So just imagine you're cranking up your Zoom. You're about to interview John Smith for this new role that's coming up. And you crank up your Zoom and you see that John Smith is sitting there with another person at the interview. So you're like, who is this person with John Smith? And you find out that John Smith has brought his mama to the job interview.
What?
And not just to sit there and watch. John Smith's mama is participating in the interview. She's answering interview questions. She's explaining stuff for John during the interview. She is all over it in that Zoom interview right next to John. What would you do as a hiring manager? What would you do? Would you end the interview? Would you say something about it? Like, how would you handle that if John Smith brought his mama to the interview? So that's what I want to get into. Apparently, there's a new trend that I had not heard of where the Gen Zers are bringing their parents with them to the interview. So I'm going to share my screen with you and let's get into it.
You have heard of bring your kid to work day, but Gen Z is flipping the script and they're bringing their parents to their job interviews. There's a recent study that finds that a quarter of job applicants ages 18 to 27 say they have brought parents to interviews with them. And specifically, some have actually had their parents physically sit in the interview room with them. Other applicants even admit to having their parents introduce themselves to hiring managers, feed them information, and answer interview questions for them. Our ABC News contributor and op-ed columnist for the LA Times, LZ Granderson, pinned his thoughts on what may have brought Gen Z to this point. He's joining me for more on this right now. LZ, I'm so glad to have you back and talk about this. And I want to tell you, in reading your article, I think what everyone needs to realize here is that you're a teacher, and your perspective as a teacher in your classroom, I think, was so vital when you talked about how your students struggle to make eye contact or even speak to one another in class. Share that with us.
Yeah, Kana, thank you so much for having me. I had been warned, if you will, by educators who had already been in the classroom as we were making our way out of the pandemic. But what I encountered personally was really shocking, in large part because I was teaching journalism. I was teaching communication students, and I was noticing getting a hard time for them to look at me face to face, look at each other face to face, and to speak up in class. And at first, it was frustrating because I was looking at through the prism of my world experiences and also understanding what they need to do in order to be successful in communications. But as I started understanding and listening to, their worldview, understood that their communication style was shaped by different circumstances.
And in that circumstance, I mean, are you really pointing at the pandemic here?
Yeah, absolutely. I know for adults, it's a couple of years, but for growing up, for young people, those formative years are tremendous. I mean, think about the differences between 14 and 16 or 16 and 18. I mean, that's significant, not just in terms of academic studies, but just in terms of social skills, brain development, and interacting with adults other than your parents and loved ones. That's the key part. The older you get and during those formative years, Kana, you're talking more with coaches, you're spending more time with employees, you've already been through an interview already. All those things they didn't have an opportunity to have. And so I'm just advocating for a little bit more compassion as we integrate them into the workforce as opposed to ridicule.
Yeah, and let's talk about the parents and all of this too, LZ. I mean, when you're looking at this, do they kind of collide here? Is this some helicopter parenting that's happening? Or is it older kids that are reacting? Or is it just the point of, as you mentioned, looking at this through a more compassionate lens?
It's so funny, Kana. I write about parenting a lot because, as you know, my son works, at ABC as well. And one of the first pieces that I wrote was that I was raising my son to be a nerd. And the reason why was because nerds got paid, nerds raise money. And if you get money, and if you ask him, I had him in every academic program I possibly could. And I was called a tiger dad at one point. But I'm very happy to have been a tiger dad and been active in my son's life. And so I applaud any parent who's being active in their child's life, even as they enter into adulthood, because you know what? When you look at the Gallup polls in terms of what employees are looking for in terms of employers, Gen Z and millennials, they have different values than baby boomers and Gen Xers. And when you look at the numbers, millennials are becoming bosses and they're understanding those differences in values and they're making accommodations for them. So, every generation has a different culture in terms of what's norm, and that includes what's norm in the labor force, and we're witnessing that now.
Yeah, actually, that was my next question, because as you write, a cultural shift in labor that is redefining what it means to work. I mean, so does that mean that the people that are doing the hiring sort of need to rethink their process as well?
Well, I mean, listen, you can continue and say that they need to grow up. You can continue and say this is unacceptable or come into the workforce, or you can recognize that, life changed after COVID. And the office buildings may be gorgeous, but we may not need them in the same capacity that we used to because we recognize that technology is able to communicate with one another. If that wasn't true, I don't think we'll be seeing the record profits during the pandemic that we saw. So we know we can work differently. And as I said before, the value systems of the millennials and Gen Zs, they're just totally different. When Gallup did a poll in terms of the top 3 things that is important to an employee from an employer, for Gen Z and for millennials, what wasn't in the top 3? The financial stability of the company. But for baby boomers and for Gen Xers like me, the stability of the company was in the top 3. That's a huge shift in terms of what's important. And so, as an employer, you find yourself having values that may be different than a generation that's coming in. I think if you want to continue to be relevant in the field that you're in, you're going to have to learn to adjust because they're coming in whether you like it or not.
And really the bottom line here, right, LZ, is that these kids are making an effort to work. They are getting out there, trying to work, have an interview. They're not sitting around waiting for a handout. So I appreciate your notes here. And as LZ mentioned, enter it with compassion. I've got your article right here.
All right, so what you guys think about that, man?
That don't make no sense. But
Gen Z bringing their parents with them to the interview because they lack the soft skills needed to get through that interview, right? What do you guys think, man? I know what I think. I think we need to stop babying the Gen Zers, right? How are they ever supposed to grow up if we keep coddling them to death, right? Well, you can only blame it on COVID for so long. COVID was in 2020. It is 2024, right? A whole lot can happen in 4 years, right? So this is quite interesting, man. That is the next supposed trend, right? Take your parents to interview day, right? I don't think that would fly. If I was a hiring manager and I turned on my Zoom and I saw you were sitting there with your mama, the interview is canceled. But yeah, let's get into this next article that I ran across that was pretty interesting. I want to share this article that I found on CNBC. I'm going to share my screen with you. We're going to get into it. All right, so here's the article from CNBC titled $22,000 Baking Pastries in France, How Much Her Life Abroad Cost, right? So let's get into the article here. All right, so Valerie Valcourt has lived all around the U.S. in Seattle, New York City, and Washington, D.C., but she made her biggest move yet last year when she quit her six-figure tech job to go to pastry school in France. Valcourt, who's 34, tells CNBC Make It she started the process in 2020 when, while earning just over $100,000 for a major company in Seattle, she was feeling at a really low place and wondering, what would I want to be doing that could bring me joy? She'd always wanted to live abroad and go to culinary school, so she began researching her options. She saved $20,000 by moving home with family in Connecticut, and by mid-2022 was accepted into a culinary program in the south of France. Valcourt officially moved to France in January of 2023 and began her accelerated 3-month program of intensive pastry courses and French lessons, followed by a 4-month internship. All in, she paid about 10,000 euros, which is about 10,800 American dollars, for tuition, and another 1,800 euros, just under $2,000 for housing. It says Valcourt now works full-time as a pastry assistant at the restaurant called Maison Charbon. You know, you got to say it fancy. She's in France, Maison Charbon. You know what I'm saying? She earns roughly 20,000 euros, which is 21,000 bucks a year, less than a quarter of her previous American salary. Even so, Valcourt lives comfortably on a lot less money in France. She says, I'm not making tons of money, but I can't afford to live here. To start, her employer covers her seasonal housing at least until April, when a new intern class starts. When she eventually finds her own apartment, Valcourt expects to pay roughly 300 euros, which is 326 bucks a month for a studio, or 500 euros, which is 550 bucks for a 1-bedroom apartment. And some units even come furnished. In her time living in some of the biggest and most expensive U.S. cities, Valcourt says she never spent less than $800 per month on rent, even when living with roommates. Most of her meals come from her restaurant job, so she rarely spends money on groceries. She'll start budgeting for her own food beginning in April and estimates it to cost about 33 American dollars per trip every 2 weeks, or $55 if I'm feeling fancy and want extra snacks and things. She says she's continuously surprised at how fresh and high quality the produce is, even at an affordable price. Valcourt says having her living and food costs covered by her employer was a big factor in taking the job, especially just starting out in her culinary career. She says, I'm not making tons of money, but I can afford to live here. I can have this pastry job, build up my resume, and build up myself to get to the level I want to and not have to worry about where I'm going to put my head at night. Transportation is super easy. Since Valcourt lives within walking distance of work, she can take the bus to get to a bigger city for about $1.09, and traveling Europe is very affordable by train or plane. Valcourt recently took a trip to Switzerland and spent $44 for a round-trip train ticket. She saw another deal to travel from Paris to London by train for only $32. Thanks to her low expenses, Valcourt has been able to save between $1,400 to $1,640 a month. She says she has more than enough to buy a car, to explore even more of France, and to start paying for an apartment in the coming months. Cultural differences at work and in life. Valcourt has noticed a big difference in how the French approach their work and personal lives compared to the norms of American work culture. She works at the restaurant for around 42 to 46 hours per week, and it varies if there's a holiday or the restaurant is slammed. Workers get 2 paid vacation days per month, or roughly 5 weeks off every year. Generous by U.S. standards. Valcourt and her colleagues work hard, but they're also protective of their breaks. The French are very adamant about not working overtime, she says. When it's time to stop, it's time to stop. Go home and rest. She and her colleagues also support leaving work at the workplace and not letting stress build up at home. Valcourt has also learned from coworkers that not all stereotypes are true. The French get a bad rap for being cold, she says, but she finds they're very friendly and love small talk. It helps that she is conversational in French too. It says, finally, she enjoys how the French approach celebrating things big and small. There's always a feat happening on a national level or in the village, she says. Lucky for her and her passion for food, they often revolve around sharing meals together, and the reverence for food and pastry here is super cool. Valcourt feels fortunate her school and the employers have helped her with necessary visas to stay in the country, and she currently has a permanent employment contract with her company, which employs many foreign and seasonal workers. She says she doesn't have a 5-year plan, but generally wants to learn as many cooking and pastry techniques as possible and see as much of France while she can. She'll eventually return to the U.S. to be closer to family, and has even talked with her dad about opening up a bakery together. So yeah, man, what do you think about that? Would you do the same? Would you decide, you know what, I'm done with this American hustle culture. I just want to go bake cakes in a foreign land, right? I'm done with America. Deuces. Would you do that and take a huge pay cut, right? Now, don't get me wrong. With the place that she's in, the cost of living is a lot lower. It's lower stress. She's not making much, but she's making enough to cover her baseline expenses and have a little some extra to splurge and go on some trips around the city, right? Do you think she's got a good deal, or do you think she crazy as hell? What you what you think, right? So definitely interested to hear what your comments are below. When I read it, I was like, you know what? If you like it, I love it. If this is what you want to do, you want to, move to France and be a pastry chef, and this making you happy, then hey, go with it. Just don't have no regrets. All right, so yeah, so let me get into the next piece of content. We all know how big a debate it is, the whole like coming back to the office movement, trying to get people away from the whole remote work trend that is going on. And as we know, remote work is here to stay. I'm sorry, it just is what it is. But you do have companies out there that are like, look, y'all, it's been fun, it's been nice, it's been real, but we gonna need you to bring your ass back to this office, right? So you're always gonna have those companies out there, right? So we're gonna look at an article that talks about companies and how they want their remote workers to come back into the office. And the reasons why they want that in some cases may not be what you think. Let's take a look at this article. I'm gonna share my screen with you. Let's go. All right, so this article right here that was published on June the 10th, the title is "Some Company Heads Hoped Return to Office Mandates Would Make People Quit." So they surveyed 1,504 workers, including 504 HR managers that they also questioned, right? And so this is what they came up with. So let's get into this article right quick. It says a new survey suggests that some U.S. companies implemented return to office policies in the hopes of getting workers to quit. And despite the belief that such policies could boost productivity compared to letting employees work from home, the survey from HR software provider Bamboo HR points to remote and in-office employees spending an equal amount of time working. Bamboo HR surveyed 1,504 full-time U.S. employees, including 504 HR workers who are a manager or higher, from March 9th to March 22nd. According to the firm, the sample group used for its report is equally split across genders and includes a spread of age groups, race groups, and geographies. It says trying to make people quit. Among those surveyed, 52% said they prefer working remotely compared to 39% who prefer working in an office. Let's look at the numbers. All right. Preference for working in the office. Okay, Gen Z is slightly more likely to prefer in-office work. Get out of here. That surprises me. I thought it would have just been the opposite. All right, so let's see. 46%. I wonder why that is. Could that have something to do with COVID? The whole like virtual thing? You think they're just over it and they're like, I need people interaction. I need people to show me what to do type of thing. I wonder where that comes from, because I would have thought that was actually the opposite. I'm really surprised by that. All right, the baby boomers, 42%. Preference for working in the office. Yeah, I mean, I thought it would be mostly boomers and Gen Xers that wanted to be in the office, right? Gen X 40% and millennials 37%. And don't get me wrong, the numbers are not too far off from each other when you look from generation to generation, right? But that's interesting. It says despite an apparently large interest in remote work, numerous companies made workers return to the office after COVID-19 pandemic restrictions were lifted. The report suggested in at least some cases, this was done to get workers to quit. It says nearly 2 in 5 managers, directors, and executives believe the organization enacted layoffs in the last year because fewer employees than they expected quit during their RTO, which is return to office. And their beliefs are well-founded. 1 in 4 VP and C-suite executives and 1 in 5 HR pros admit they hope for some voluntary turnover during an RTO. It's hard to get a firm understanding of the effectiveness of RTO policies, as 22% of HR professionals surveyed said that their company has no metrics for measuring a successful RTO. The report points to a disconnect between stated goals for RTO and actually measuring the success of those goals. The report also found that 28% of remote workers fear they will be laid off before those working in the office. It says while Bamboo HR's report doesn't comment on this, some firms have discouraged employees from working remotely. Dell, for example, told remote workers that they can't be promoted. By using RTO mandates as a workforce reduction tactic, companies are losing talent and morale among their employees. Bamboo HR's report says the report notes that 45% of people surveyed whose companies have RTO policies said they lost valued workers. The finding is similar to that of a May study of Apple, Microsoft, and SpaceX that suggested that RTO mandates drove senior talent away. In Bamboo HR survey, 28% said they would consider leaving their jobs if their employer enacted an R2O mandate. Productivity. A frequently cited reason for in-office mandates is to drive teamwork, collaboration, and productivity. Bamboo HR's data, however, doesn't support the idea of RTO mandates driving productivity. According to the report, regardless of whether they're working in their home or in an office, employees work for 76% of a 9-to-5 shift, the report adds. It says when it comes to workers who's more productive overall, in-office workers spend around 1 hour more socializing than their remote counterparts, while remote workers spend that time on work-related tasks and responsibilities. That makes total sense. How many times have you gone into the office and you always got these water cooler people? They want to hang around and talk shit and drink coffee and do everything but work. So I can definitely see that. It's obvious. You're in a work setting. It's more social, right? So you're going to spend more time talking than you typically would if you were just in your home office by yourself, and the only form of communication you have is maybe like on a Microsoft Team chat or something like that. So automatically you're socializing a lot less because you don't have, the in-office interaction to deal with. So it makes total sense. It says, despite this, 32% of managers said that one of the main goals of their firm implementing an in-office policy was to track employee work habits, with some companies tracking VPN usage and company badge swipes to ensure employees are coming into the office as expected. RTO works for some. It says, although the majority of people surveyed prefer working from home, The survey also highlighted some perceived benefits of working in the office. For example, 48% of the people surveyed said their work results have improved since returning to the office per the report, and 58% said they have a stronger professional network since going back, Bamboo HR reported. Preferences for working from home or in an office can vary by various factors like age. This points to the benefits of building RTO strategies around worker feedback and needs. It says the mental and emotional burdens workers face today are real, and the companies who seek employee feedback with the intent to listen and improve are the ones who will win employee loyalty and ultimately customer satisfaction. All right, man. So yeah, what you think? What you think? A lot of you watching, you may be working remotely, and some of you have been working remotely for a long time. And some of you may have even been working remotely before working remote was like a big thing, right? So if all of a sudden your company said, all right, that's enough for remote work, I'm gonna need all your asses coming back into the office next month, effective immediately. What you gonna do? You gonna box up all your little files you got in your home office? You gonna take your ass back to the office, or are you going to quit? What are you gonna do? Right? Definitely interested to hear what your thoughts are. Me personally, I ain't trying to work in nobody's office. I'm gonna be honest with you. I am not looking to fight Atlanta traffic every morning going to work and fight Atlanta traffic every day going home. I'm just not willing to do with it. And then I'm not willing to have to partake in these stupid ass in-office politics that people have going on and all the little, crazy nuances that you get with having an in-office job. Are there some things that are cool? Yeah. When I think about when I used to work in the office, yeah, it was cool on Fridays. We ordering pizza, we having our donuts, whatever. We have these social activities, especially when you like your coworkers. That could be kind of cool, right? But for the most part, I ain't trying to go back into the office. So I'm going to stop this video right here. I hope you enjoyed the content. I will see you guys on the next one. Tech Job Tina out. Peace and blessings. Bye.